let's go through an example of everything that we've learned so far, put it all together. So, example number 1. We have ACT test scores that are approximately normally distributed. 1 year that has a mean score of 21 and a standard deviation of 5.2. So we're going to start by drawing the normal curve. And we're going to do this just like we did in the last video. We're going to have the mean in the middle, and then we do 3 lines to each side. We want our lines to be fairly evenly spaced. We're going to add standard deviations to the right, minus standard deviations to the left. Now the mean goes in the middle. It said the mean is 21. Add my standard deviation as I go to the right. Subtract my standard deviation as I go to the left. And you should be able to just take those and plug it into your calculator. So 21 plus 5.2, enter, what does that equal? Plus 5.2, enter, what does that equal? And just keep adding as we go to the right, and then subtracting as we go to the left. And that should give us, here's my answer key. Okay, so we should get, as we go to the right, 26.2, 31.4, and 36.6. Then we have to the left 15.8, 10.6, and 5.4. Okay, here's our normal curve. We have the mean, we have the standard deviation, we have the scores, check. So next one, it says, what is the interval that contains 95% of scores? So this has to do with the 68, 95, 99.5 rule. So let's go back to our normal curve and write these rules in. So 68 is 1 standard deviation from the mean. 68%, there's that one. 95 is 2 standard deviations from the mean. So 95. And 99.5 is 3 standard deviations from the mean. Okay. So, which of the intervals contains 95% of the scores? Well, 95 goes from, right there, 10.6 up to 31.4. So that's saying that 95% of students score between a 10.6 and a 31.4 on the ACT. Now, here's a slightly harder question. What percentage of scores are between 15.8 and 31.4? So I want to know from 15.8 up to 31.4. I want to know that percentage right there. So I need to figure out what percentage that is. Well, I do know that those two are 68%, because they line up with my 68% right there. So I just need to figure out what this one is, and then I can do 68 plus that, and I'm good. So then we need to figure out, well, how much is that section? Well, let's do a little bit of algebra. If we know that this whole section is 95, and I take out this middle section, so I do the whole thing 95, I'll write this down, minus the 68. So I do this whole thing minus the middle part. Then I'm left with this part and this part. So whatever this answer is, I just need to take it and divide it by 2, and that should give me how much this 1 is. So 95 minus 68 divided by 2, and you'll find that that actually equals 13.5%. So that means this little section right here is 13.5. Now, you cannot just do 95 divided by 4 to get these 4 sections, because that would mean every section is the same amount, and there's more in the middle than there is in the edges. So we can't just divide by 4, we've got to do this process right here. So now we can go back. We had 68% plus the 13.5 that we just got is going to be 81.5%. So 81.5% of students score between 15.8 and 31.4. Okay, last question. How many standard deviations, aka the z-score, is a score of 28 and 18? So let's review the z-score equation. Z-score is the data point, which would be these. So in this case, x is 28, and in this one, x is 18. Minus the mean. Well, we know the mean for both of these is 21. That's what the problem said so. Divided by the standard deviation. And the problem said the standard deviation was 5.2. So we just need to plug all that into our equation. So the data point, 28, minus the mean, divided by the standard deviation. And you're going to get 1.346. So a score of 28 is 1.346 standard deviations above the mean, which is pretty good. Now let's try the 18. Minus the mean divided by the standard deviation gives us a z-score of negative 0.576. which is about 0.5 standard deviations below the mean. So that means you scored below average. Not awesome. Probably want to try again and get a better score. Anyway, so that is example number 1. That's very similar to what you have to do on your homework. Your homework, just so you know, is questions 1 through 4. So 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. So, yes, all of it. Now, there are a couple other problems on your homework that you cannot do by hand where we have to use a calculator. So we're going to talk about how to do that in the next video.